The espresso machine hissed behind me, its familiar screech almost drowning out the soft jazz playing overhead. It was nearly midnight, and my feet ached in the cheap black flats I'd bought on clearance last month. The leather was already cracking at the edges, just like everything else in my life, worn thin, barely holding together. "Order up, Ellie," Marco called from the kitchen, sliding a plate of tiramisu across the counter. I caught it with practiced ease, balancing it alongside a cup of espresso on my tray. Cicero's was one of those hidden gems in Chicago that somehow survived on reputation alone. Wood-paneled walls, leather booths worn smooth from decades of use, and chandeliers that cast everything in a warm amber glow. It was old-world Italian elegance that attracted a certain clientele, people with money, influence, and secrets. I'd been working here for 8 months, ever since I'd fled Boston with nothing but a duffel bag and the desperate need to disappear. "Table 7, corner booth," Marco added unnecessarily. I knew exactly who sat at table 7. He'd been coming in every Thursday for the past 6 weeks, always at 11:30 p.m., always alone except for the hulking figure who sat at a separate table nearby, never ordering more than coffee. The corner booth was the most secluded in the restaurant, half hidden by a decorative pillar and offering a clear view of both entrances. My pulse quickened as I approached, feeling the weight of his gaze before I even turned the corner. There was something magnetic about him, something that made the air feel charged whenever he was near. "Your espresso and tiramisu, sir," I murmured, carefully setting down the delicate cup and plate. "Adriano Vitali. At least, that's the name he gave when he made reservations. But I knew better. I'd recognized him the moment he first walked through the door 6 weeks ago. Though I'd been careful not to show it, how could I forget the face that had haunted my nightmares for the past year? "Thank you," he replied, his voice a low, smooth rumble that seemed to vibrate through my chest. His English was perfect, just the slightest hint of an Italian accent clinging to the edges of his words. I risked a glance at his face. A mistake. His eyes caught mine, dark and intense, framed by impossibly long lashes. His features were almost too perfect, like something carved from marble by an artist with an obsession for symmetry. Strong jawline, straight nose, full lips currently curved into a slight smile. He couldn't be older than 35. Yet there was something ancient in those eyes. Something that had seen too much. "Will there be anything else?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. He studied me for a moment longer than necessary, his eyes trailing over my face as if memorizing each feature. "No, that's all for now." I nodded and turned to leave, relief flooding through me. Each interaction with him left me feeling like I'd narrowly escaped something dangerous, like walking away from the edge of a cliff after peering over. I made it halfway across the restaurant before I felt something slip beneath my foot. One of the floor tiles was loose, catching the toe of my already unstable flat. I stumbled, my hands flying out to catch myself on a nearby chair. The commotion was minimal, just enough to draw a few glances, but the humiliation burned hot on my cheeks. When I straightened and looked back, he was watching me, his expression unreadable, something twisted in my stomach. Fear, or something else I didn't want to name. I retreated to the safety of the bar, busying myself with polishing glasses that were already spotless. Through the mirrors lining the back of the bar, I could see him in the corner, methodically eating his dessert, occasionally glancing at his phone. The restaurant was nearly empty now, just a couple finishing their wine by the window, and a group of businessmen paying their bill. "You okay?" Sophia asked, sliding behind the bar beside me. "You look pale." "Just tired," I lied. "Long day." She nodded sympathetically, her eyes drifting to the corner booth. "He asked for you specifically tonight," she said, lowering her voice. "When Marcos tried to seat him in his usual spot, he said he wanted to be in your section." My hand stilled on the glass I was polishing. "He did?" "Mm-hmm. Left you a $300 tip last week, too." She wiggled her eyebrows suggestively. "I think someone has an admirer." I forced a smile, but my insides had turned to ice. He was watching me, specifically requesting me. This wasn't the casual interest of a regular customer appreciating good service. This was deliberate. I don't need that kind of admirer, I muttered. Sophia glanced around and leaned closer. Do you know who he is? She whispered. I kept my expression carefully neutral. Should I? Marco says he's connected, like seriously connected. She made a vague gesture that I supposed was meant to imply organized crime. Old money from Sicily, but rumor has it he runs half the operation in Chicago now. I'd known exactly who he was long before Marco's gossip made the rounds. Dante Russo, not Adriano Vitali. His father had been one of the most feared men in the Boston underworld until his assassination last year. The son had disappeared afterward, and everyone assumed he'd either been killed too, or fled the country. Everyone was wrong. He'd simply moved territories, establishing himself in Chicago with frightening efficiency. I knew because my ex-boyfriend, Tommy, had worked for the Russo family. Tommy had talked too much when he drank, revealing things about the family business that should have remained secret. Things about ledgers and evidence and names, things that could get people killed, things that had gotten Tommy killed. Ellie, Marco called from across the restaurant. Table 7 wants the check. I nodded, my mouth suddenly dry. I printed his bill, just $14.50 for the espresso and tiramisu, and carried it to his table, keeping my eyes down. I hope everything was to your satisfaction, I said automatically, as I placed the leather folder on the table. He didn't take it immediately. Instead, he leaned back slightly, studying me with that same intense gaze. Do I know you from somewhere? He asked. You seem familiar. My heart hammered against my ribs. I don't think so, sir. He tilted his head slightly. Where are you from originally? Not Chicago, I think. Pennsylvania. I lied smoothly. I'd practiced this story countless times. Small town near Pittsburgh, you wouldn't know it. His eyes narrowed fractionally, and I knew he didn't believe me, but he nodded, reaching for his wallet. He placed several bills in the folder without even glancing at the total. Have a good evening, sir, I said, starting to turn away. Ellie, he called softly, stopping me in my tracks. The way he said my name sent a shiver down my spine. I'll see you next week. It wasn't a question. It was a statement, a certainty that left no room for alternatives. I managed a tight smile and nodded before walking away, my legs trembling beneath me. As I returned to the bar, I glanced back to see him rising from his booth, buttoning his tailored suit jacket with elegant precision. His bodyguard, a mountain of a man with a neck thicker than my thigh, immediately stood as well, scanning the room before falling into step behind him. Dante paused at the door, looking back over his shoulder. Our eyes met across the restaurant, and for one terrifying moment, I thought he might come back, but then he turned and was gone, disappearing into the Chicago night. I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Earth to Ellie, Sophia said, waving a hand in front of my face. You planning on standing there all night, or can we close up? Sorry, I muttered, shaking myself out of my daze. By the time we finished closing, it was nearly 2 a.m. I shrugged into my worn peacoat, pulling the collar up against the bite of the late autumn wind. Marco and Sophia offered to share an Uber, but I declined. My apartment was only 6 blocks away, and I needed the walk to clear my head. Chicago at night was a different creature than during the day. The wind whipped between the buildings, carrying the scent of the lake and the lingering aroma of food from late-night eateries. My footsteps echoed on the sidewalk, joining the distant sounds of traffic and the occasional shout of revelers stumbling home from bars. I was 2 blocks from my apartment when I noticed the black SUV crawling along the street beside me. My pulse spiked, and I quickened my pace, keeping my head down. The vehicle pulled ahead, stopping at the corner. The passenger window rolled down. "Get in," a voice commanded. The same voice from the restaurant, but harder now, stripped of its polite veneer. I stopped, adrenaline flooding my system. "I'm fine, thank you," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "My apartment is just up ahead." "I know exactly where your apartment is, Eliana Pierce," he said, using my real name, the name I'd left behind in Boston, along with everything else. "Now get in the car before I make a scene." The world tilted beneath my feet. He knew. He'd known all along. My cover was blown, my carefully constructed safety net ripped away in an instant. How did you— Now, the single word carried the weight of a threat, a promise of consequences I didn't want to contemplate. I looked up and down the street, calculating my chances of outrunning him. Slim to none. Even if I could outpace the car, where would I go? Back to the restaurant? To the police? Neither would protect me from what Dante Russo wanted. With a deep breath, I moved toward the car. The back door swung open, revealing the darkened interior. Dante sat inside, his face half hidden in shadow. As I hesitated at the threshold, he reached out and took my hand, his touch unexpectedly gentle as he guided me inside. The door closed behind me with a soft thud that somehow sounded like the final nail in a coffin. "Hello, Eliana," he said softly, as the car pulled away from the curb. "I've been looking for you for a very long time." My throat constricted, but I forced myself to meet his gaze. If he was going to kill me for what I knew, for what Tommy had told me, I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me cower. "I know who you are, Dante Russo," I whispered, watching as his body tensed at the sound of his real name. "And I know what you did to Tommy." Something flashed in his eyes, surprise, quickly masked by something darker. He leaned forward, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Sandalwood and spice, expensive and intoxicating despite my fear. "No," he said, his voice a dangerous caress. "You don't know anything at all, but you're about to learn." The interior of the SUV was climate-controlled perfection, a stark contrast to the biting wind outside. Soft leather seats absorbed the vehicle's gentle movement as we glided through Chicago's empty streets. Everything about the car spoke of luxury and power, from the privacy glass separating us from the driver to the subtle glow of ambient lighting that illuminated Dante's face in golden shadows. "Where are you taking me?" I asked, pressing myself against the door, putting as much distance between us as the confined space would allow. Dante's eyes never left my face. "Somewhere we can talk privately." "I have nothing to say to you." The words came out braver than I felt. He smiled, a cold, calculating expression that never reached his eyes. 6 weeks, Eliana. 6 weeks I've been watching you serve coffee and desserts, waiting for you to recognize me. He leaned forward slightly. "And tonight, you finally slipped. I saw it in your eyes." I swallowed hard, remembering my stumble in the restaurant. "Is that why you're kidnapping me? Because I recognized you? Kidnapping?" He raised an eyebrow, amusement playing at the corners of his mouth. "I offered you a ride. You got in willingly. Under threat. Under protection," he corrected. "Do you have any idea how dangerous it is for a woman to walk alone at this hour?" A bitter laugh escaped me. "The only danger I'm facing is sitting right next to me." Something shifted in his expression then. A hardening around the eyes, a tightening of his jaw. "If I wanted to hurt you, Eliana, I would have done so weeks ago. Or did you think it was coincidence that I found you? That I just happened to walk into the one restaurant in Chicago where Tommy Gallagher's girlfriend was hiding?" The mention of Tommy's name sent a jolt of pain through my chest. "Ex-girlfriend," I corrected automatically. "And he's dead because of you." Dante's expression didn't change. "Tommy is dead because he stole from me. From my family." "He never stole anything," I insisted, the lie falling easily from my lips. It was what I'd been telling myself for months, even as I ran with a flash drive hidden in the lining of my coat. Dante's smile was knowing, almost pitying. "Then why run? Why change your name? Why hide in a city where you know no one?" He shook his head slowly. "Tommy took something that didn't belong to him, and then he told you about it. That makes you either an accomplice or a liability." The car slowed, turning into an underground parking garage beneath a towering high-rise. My heart rate accelerated. We were arriving at our destination, and I still had no idea what he planned to do with me. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The SUV came to a smooth stop. The driver, the same hulking man from the restaurant, exited first, opening Dante's door before coming around to my side. As he opened my door, the cold garage air rushed in, carrying the scent of concrete and expensive cars. "Ms. Pierce," the bodyguard said, offering his hand to help me out. I ignored it, climbing out on my own, my legs unsteady beneath me. Dante appeared beside me, uncomfortably close. "This way," he said, placing a hand at the small of my back to guide me toward a private elevator. His touch burned through my thin coat, sending an unwelcome shiver up my spine. The elevator required a keycard and fingerprint scan. As we ascended, I studied my reflection in the mirrored walls. Pale face, dark circles under wide, frightened eyes, blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. I looked exactly like what I was. A waitress at the end of a long shift, not someone prepared for a confrontation with one of the most dangerous men in Chicago. Beside me, Dante looked completely at ease, checking his phone with casual indifference. The juxtaposition of our reflections was almost comical. Him in his tailored Italian suit that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. Me in my black polyester uniform that smelled faintly of coffee and garlic bread. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased Chicago's glittering skyline. The city spread out below us like a carpet of stars. The space was minimalist and modern. All clean lines, neutral colors, and tastefully arranged artwork that I suspected might be originals. "Welcome to my home," Dante said, removing his suit jacket and draping it over a sleek leather chair. "Can I offer you a drink?" The casual hospitality threw me off balance. "Are you serious?" "Completely." He moved to a bar in the corner, selecting a crystal decanter. "Scotch? Wine? Something else?" "I want to leave," I said, standing rigidly by the elevator. He poured amber liquid into 2 glasses, ignoring my request. "You're free to go whenever you want, Eliana. The elevator won't stop you." He turned, offering me one of the glasses. "But first, let's discuss what you took from me." I made no move to take the glass or step further into the apartment. "I didn't take anything from you," Dante sighed, setting both glasses on a side table. "Tommy accessed confidential files from my family's servers. Financial records, client information, evidence that could destroy operations my father spent decades building." His voice remained conversational, as if discussing the weather. The data was copied onto a drive that was never recovered after his unfortunate accident. My mouth went dry. "Murder, you mean, not an accident. Call it what you will." He shrugged. "The fact remains, those files disappeared the same night Tommy did. And a week later, so did you." His eyes fixed on mine, searching. "Quite the coincidence, don't you think?" I forced myself to hold his gaze. "I left because I was afraid, because my boyfriend had just been found floating in Boston Harbor with a bullet in his head. And you thought you might be next?" He moved closer, his steps measured and deliberate. "Why would you think that, unless you had something worth killing for?" My back pressed against the wall beside the elevator. There was nowhere else to retreat. "Stay away from me." He stopped, leaving just enough space between us that I could still breathe, could still think. "I've spent the last year tracking every lead, following every whisper that might point to those files. Do you know what I found?" He didn't wait for my answer. "Nothing. Until 3 months ago, when a facial recognition program flagged a waitress in Chicago who looked remarkably like Eliana Pierce. My heart pounded in my ears. If you think I have these files, why wait 6 weeks? Why the charade of coming to the restaurant, leaving ridiculous tips, pretending not to know me?" Something darkened in his expression. "I needed to be sure it was you, and I needed to know if you were working with someone." His voice dropped lower. "Are you, Eliana? Is someone else pulling your strings?" "No," I answered truthfully. "There's no one." He studied me for a long moment, then abruptly stepped back. "Good. That simplifies things." He retrieved the drinks, offering one to me again. "Now, can we please have this conversation like civilized people? I promise you're in no danger, at least not at the moment." The implied threat hung in the air between us. My options were limited. I could continue denying everything, but Dante clearly had resources I couldn't match. He'd found me once. He could find me again if I ran. I accepted the glass, needing something to occupy my trembling hands. The scotch burned my throat as I took a small sip, but the warmth that spread through my chest was oddly comforting. "Sit." Dante gestured toward an elegant sofa facing the windows. When I hesitated, he added, "Please." I perched on the edge of the sofa, keeping my back straight, my body poised for flight. Dante settled in a chair opposite me, swirling the scotch in his glass before taking a measured sip. "I'm not interested in hurting you," he said, his voice gentler than before. Despite what you may believe about me, I'm not my father. I don't kill without purpose. That's supposed to reassure me? A hint of a smile touched his lips. It should. It means your survival is entirely within your control. He set his glass down, leaning forward. Give me the files, and you're free to go. Start a new life, anywhere you want. I'll even provide the funding. Consider it a finder's fee. The offer hung in the air between us, tempting in its simplicity. But I knew better than to trust the word of a man like Dante Russo. And if I don't have them? I asked. His expression hardened. Don't insult my intelligence, Eliana. Tommy trusted you above everyone else. He would have given them to you for safekeeping. A memory flashed through my mind, Tommy showing up at my apartment at 3 a.m., his face ashen with fear. Hold on to this, he'd said, pressing the drive into my palm. Don't tell anyone you have it. It's insurance in case something happens to me. Less than 12 hours later, he was dead. I dumped it. I lied, watching Dante's face carefully. In the harbor, right after I heard what happened to Tommy. I was scared, and I didn't want anything connecting me to him. Anger flashed in his eyes, quickly controlled but unmistakable. You expect me to believe that you threw away the only leverage you had? The only thing keeping you alive? I didn't know what was on it, I insisted. I just knew it got Tommy killed, and I wanted no part of it. Dante stood abruptly, pacing to the window. His reflection stared back, imposed over the city lights, powerful, dangerous, caged. Do you know what was on that drive, Eliana? I remained silent, unsure what answer would keep me safest. He turned, his face half in shadow. Evidence, names, accounts. Things that could destroy my family's business, yes, but also things that could protect it. My father was not a trusting man. He kept records on everyone. Allies, enemies, politicians on the payroll, cops who looked the other way. His voice had taken on an edge of desperation I hadn't heard before. That drive doesn't just threaten me. It threatens a delicate balance that's kept the peace in this city for decades. I watched him carefully, processing this new information. Tommy had never told me exactly what was on the drive, only that it was worth millions to the right buyer. Worth dying for, apparently. If what you say is true, I said slowly, then it's gone. I destroyed it. Dante's eyes narrowed. I don't believe you. That's not my problem, I replied, setting down my barely touched drink and standing. I've told you what I know. If you're not going to kill me, then I'd like to leave now. He moved with surprising speed, closing the distance between us in 3 long strides. His hand caught my wrist, not painfully tight but firm enough that I couldn't pull away. You're not going anywhere until I have that drive, he said, his face inches from mine, one way or another. I tried to step back, but my legs hit the sofa behind me. Let go of me. Something shifted in his expression, the cold calculation giving way to something more complicated, more human. His grip on my wrist loosened slightly, but he didn't release me. I can protect you, he said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. Others are looking for that drive too. People who won't be as patient as I've been. I don't need your protection, I snapped, even as a chill ran down my spine at his warning. His thumb brushed over my pulse point, a strangely intimate gesture that made my breath catch. Don't you? You've been looking over your shoulder for a year, changing your name, living in fear. Is that the kind of life you want? It's better than being owned by you, I retorted, trying to ignore the warmth of his touch, the scent of his cologne clouding my judgment. His other hand came up to brush a strand of hair from my face, the gesture so unexpected that I froze. Is that what you think I want, to own you? Isn't it? I whispered, unable to look away from the intensity in his eyes. Isn't that what men like you do? Take what you want, regardless of who it hurts? Something that might have been pain flickered across his features. You don't know me, Eliana. I know enough. He released my wrist suddenly, stepping back as if burned. It's late. We'll continue this conversation tomorrow. The abrupt dismissal left me unbalanced. You're letting me go? For tonight. He walked to a desk, scribbling something on a slip of paper. My private number. Call me when you're ready to be reasonable. He handed me the paper, his fingers brushing mine. One of my men will drive you home. I can walk. That's not a suggestion. His tone brooked no argument. I've let you keep your freedom, for now. Don't make me regret it. The implied threat hung in the air between us. I took the paper, slipping it into my pocket. As if on cue, the elevator doors opened, revealing the hulking bodyguard. Dante nodded once, and the man stepped aside, holding the door for me. I moved toward the elevator, stopping just before entering. What happens if I run? Dante's smile was cold, predatory. You won't get far, and next time I won't be so accommodating. As the elevator doors closed between us, his last words echoed in my head. I wasn't free. I'd never be free as long as he believed I had those files. And the worst part? The flash drive was still hidden in my apartment, exactly where I'd concealed it the day I arrived in Chicago. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay in my cramped studio apartment, staring at the water stains on the ceiling while replaying every moment of my encounter with Dante. The slip of paper with his number sat on my nightstand, seeming to pulse with silent threat. Dawn arrived with no solutions, only the certainty that my carefully constructed hiding place had crumbled around me. I called in sick to Cicero's, something I'd never done before. Marco sounded concerned but didn't press for details. With the restaurant no longer a safe haven, I needed time to think, to plan my next move. The flash drive was still hidden inside a hollowed-out book on my small bookshelf. Pride and Prejudice, Tommy's unexpected gift on our first anniversary. Every girl should own a copy, he'd said with that crooked smile I'd fallen for. I never told him I'd already read it 3 times. Now I pulled the book from the shelf, my fingers trembling as I pried open the secret compartment I'd created. The small black drive sat nestled inside, innocuous despite the destruction it had caused. I'd never looked at its contents, too afraid of what I might find, too certain that knowledge would only make me more of a target. But now, with Dante aware of my existence, that calculation had changed. I needed to understand what I was holding, what made it valuable enough to kill for, and possibly what might keep me alive. My ancient laptop whirred to life, protesting as I plugged in the drive. A password prompt appeared on the screen. I tried Tommy's birthday, our anniversary, his mother's name. Nothing worked. After the 3rd failed attempt, a warning appeared, 2 attempts remaining before data wipe. I yanked the drive out, heart pounding. I couldn't risk losing whatever was on it. The drive was my only leverage, my only protection against Dante, and whoever else might be searching for it. I returned it to its hiding place, mind racing. The sound of knocking froze me in place. 3 sharp raps, authoritative and impossible to ignore. I crept to the door, peering through the peephole. A man in a tailored suit stood outside, his posture rigid, face impassive. Not Dante, but definitely one of his men. I recognized him from the restaurant, usually sitting alone at a table near the door on Dante's weekly visits. "Ms. Pierce?" he called through the door. "Mr. Russo requests your presence for lunch." My throat constricted. "Tell Mr. Russo I'm not feeling well today." "He's aware. He thought a change of scenery might improve your health." The man's tone remained perfectly professional, but the implicit command was clear. "A car is waiting downstairs." I leaned my forehead against the door, considering my options. Running was pointless. Dante had found me once and would find me again. Fighting was equally futile. The only path forward was through. "Give me 15 minutes, I called back. I showered quickly, the hot water doing little to ease the tension in my shoulders. I dressed with care, selecting my best jeans and a simple blue sweater that brought out my eyes. If I was going to face Dante again, I wanted armor, even if it was only psychological. The flash drive went with me, secured in an inner pocket of my coat. I wouldn't give it to him. Not yet. But having it close gave me a sense of security, however false it might be. The same black SUV from last night idled at the curb. The bodyguard opened the rear door for me, but instead of Dante inside, I found only empty leather seats. "Where are we going?" I asked as the car pulled away from the curb. "Mr. Russo's residence outside the city," the driver replied, his eyes meeting mine briefly in the rearview mirror. The drive took nearly an hour, the cityscape giving way to affluent suburbs, before finally turning onto a private road flanked by ornate iron gates. The estate that came into view took my breath away. a sprawling stone mansion set among manicured gardens and stately trees, just beginning to show their fall colors. This is where he lives? I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. One of his residences, the driver corrected, pulling up to the front entrance. The door opened before I reached it. A middle-aged woman in a simple black dress greeted me with a professional smile. "Ms. Pierce, Mr. Russo is waiting for you in the solarium. This way, please." I followed her through a grand foyer, past rooms filled with antiques and artwork that belonged in museums. The solarium was at the back of the house, a glass-enclosed space filled with exotic plants and bathed in natural light. Dante stood as I entered, dressed more casually than I'd ever seen him, in dark slacks and a slate blue button-down, the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing strong forearms. "Eliana," he greeted, his eyes moving over me in an assessing glance. "You look better than I expected after our late night." "Disappointingly alive?" I suggested, remaining near the doorway. A hint of a smile played at his lips. "On the contrary. Please, sit." He gestured to a table set for two, an array of covered dishes arranged between fine china and crystal glasses. "I thought you might be hungry." My stomach betrayed me with a low growl. I hadn't eaten since my shift at Cicero's the previous night. "I'm not here for lunch," I said, even as I moved toward the table. "I'm here because your henchman didn't give me much choice." "Paolo can be persuasive," Dante agreed, pulling out a chair for me. When I hesitated, he added, "It's just food, Eliana, not poison." I sat, keeping my back straight, my posture defensive. Dante took the chair opposite, removing the covers from the dishes to reveal a spread that would have been at home in any fine restaurant. Delicate pasta, fresh bread, roasted vegetables. "You have a beautiful home," I said, filling the silence as he poured wine into my glass. "It was my mother's favorite," he replied, surprising me with the personal detail. "She designed most of the gardens herself." I took a small bite of pasta, the rich flavor flooding my mouth. "And where is she now?" "She died when I was 14, cancer." His expression remained neutral, but something in his eyes suggested the wound hadn't fully healed. "My father never remarried." "And your father was killed last year," I said, watching his reaction carefully. Dante's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You seem well informed about my family tragedies." "Tommy talked about your family sometimes," I admitted. "Usually when he was drunk." "And what else did Tommy share when he was drunk?" Dante asked, his voice deceptively casual. I met his gaze steadily. "Nothing worth dying for." He studied me for a long moment before speaking again. "I had nothing to do with Tommy's death, Eliana." The statement was so unexpected that I laughed. "You expect me to believe that? He stole from you. And then he turned up dead. It doesn't take a genius to connect those dots. The world I operate in is more complicated than you understand." Dante set down his fork, leaning slightly forward. "Yes, Tommy betrayed me. Yes, he stole information that could destroy everything my family built. But I didn't order his death. Then who did? That's what I've been trying to figure out for the past year." His eyes held mine, intense and unwavering. "The same people who killed Tommy are the ones I'm trying to protect you from." I wanted to dismiss his words as manipulation, but something in his expression gave me pause. "Why would you protect me? Because you have something they want," he answered simply. "And because I don't like loose ends." "I'm a person, not a loose end," I snapped. His expression softened slightly. "Poor choice of words. What I meant is that I take responsibility for the people in my orbit. Tommy worked for me. His actions put you in danger. That makes your safety my concern." "How noble," I muttered, taking a sip of wine to hide my confusion. This wasn't how I'd expected this conversation to go. Dante was supposed to be the villain in this story, not someone claiming to protect me. "It's not nobility, it's practicality," he corrected. "The files on that drive contain sensitive information about my operations, yes, but they also contain evidence of corruption in Chicago's police department and city hall. If that information fell into the wrong hands, the resulting power vacuum would spark a war that would destroy this city." I set down my glass carefully. "You still think I have it." "I know you do." His certainty was unnerving, "and I think you brought it with you today." My hand moved instinctively toward my coat pocket before I could stop myself. Dante's eyes tracked the movement, a smile of satisfaction spreading across his face. As I thought. You don't know anything, I said, but the denial sounded hollow even to my own ears. Dante leaned back in his chair, surprisingly relaxed for a man discussing matters of life and death. Last night I had my people do a more thorough background check on you. Harvard graduate, magna cum laude. Recruited by 3 investment banks before choosing a non-profit focused on financial literacy in underserved communities. His voice held a note of genuine admiration. Impressive credentials for someone slinging espresso at an Italian restaurant. I pushed my plate away, appetite gone. What's your point? My point is that you're smart, too smart to run without insurance. He took a sip of his wine, watching me over the rim of his glass. Too smart to destroy the only leverage you had. Maybe I'm also smart enough to know when I'm in over my head, I countered. Maybe I wanted nothing to do with whatever got Tommy killed. And yet here you are, he gestured between us, still in possession of the very thing that put a target on your back. I stood abruptly, unable to sit still under his scrutiny any longer. What do you want from me, Dante? Just tell me so we can end this game. He rose as well, moving around the table until he stood before me, close enough that I had to tilt my head to maintain eye contact. I want the drive, obviously. But more than that, I want to know who's working against me, who killed Tommy, who's been systematically targeting my operations for the past year. And you think the answer is on the drive? I think it might be, he admitted. But there's a problem. The files are encrypted, with a failsafe that will wipe everything after too many failed password attempts. I'm guessing Tommy gave you the password. I shook my head. He didn't tell me anything about a password. Frustration flashed across Dante's features. Think, Eliana. Did he say anything unusual the last time you saw him? Leave any clues? The memory of that night rushed back. Tommy's pale face, his shaking hands as he pressed the drive into my palm. It's insurance, he'd said. And then, almost as an afterthought, remember our first date? The answer's where we began. I'd thought he was being sentimental in what he feared might be our last moments together. Now I wondered if it had been a message. Our first date, I murmured, almost to myself. Dante's eyes sharpened. What about it? I hesitated, uncertain whether to share even this small piece of information. But if Dante was telling the truth, if someone else had killed Tommy and was now hunting for the drive, I needed allies, even dangerous ones. Tommy mentioned our first date the night he gave me the drive, I admitted. We went to the aquarium. He said something about where we began. I thought he was just being nostalgic. Or giving you a hint about the password, Dante suggested, excitement bleeding into his voice. What exhibit did you visit first? What was memorable about that day? I closed my eyes, trying to recall details from a date 3 years ago. We started at the penguin exhibit. Tommy said they reminded him of me. Small, but fiercely determined. Penguins, Dante repeated, testing the word. Too obvious for a password, but maybe a derivative. It doesn't matter, I interrupted, opening my eyes. I'm not giving you the drive. His expression hardened. After everything I've told you, you still don't understand what's at stake. I understand perfectly, I countered. You want what's yours, but that drive is the only thing keeping me alive. The moment I hand it over, I become expendable. Dante stepped closer, his proximity setting off warning bells in my mind even as something else, something dangerous and unwelcome, fluttered in my stomach. If I wanted you dead, Eliana, we wouldn't be having lunch in my mother's solarium, he said, his voice dropping to a low intensity that sent shivers down my spine. I would have had Paolo retrieve the drive from your apartment while you were working last night, and you would have disappeared without a trace. The brutal honesty of his statement hit me like a physical blow. He was right. If my death was his goal, I would already be dead. Then what do you want? I whispered, hating the tremor in my voice. His hand came up to my face, fingers brushing my cheek in a gesture too gentle for a man with blood on his hands. I want your help. Work with me to unlock the drive. Help me find out who's trying to destroy what my family built. Do that, and when it's over, I'll set you up anywhere in the world with enough money to start fresh. And if I refuse, His thumb traced my lower lip, the unexpected intimacy making my breath catch. I don't think you will. I stepped back, needing distance from his magnetic pull. You seem very confident for someone who's been chasing this drive for a year. A smile played at the corners of his mouth. I'm confident because I know you're as curious as I am about what's on it. About why Tommy died. His eyes locked with mine, seeing more than I wanted him to. You want answers as much as I do. He was right, and we both knew it. The mystery of Tommy's death, of the drive's contents, had haunted me for a year. Running hadn't brought me peace, only a different kind of prison built from fear and isolation. I want protection, I said finally, the decision crystallizing as I spoke. Real protection, not just words. And when this is over, I want enough money to disappear completely, new identity, new background, enough resources that I never have to look over my shoulder again. Done, Dante agreed immediately. But there's one condition. I tensed, waiting for the other shoe to drop. You stay here at the estate until we resolve this. His expression brooked no argument. My security can protect you better here than in that apartment in the city. You mean you can keep an eye on me, I translated. He didn't bother denying it. That too. A gilded cage was still a cage. But at least in this one, I might find the answers I'd been searching for. And with Dante Russo as an ally instead of an enemy, I might actually survive long enough to use them. I'll need clothes, I said, the acceptance implicit in my words. And my laptop. Relief flickered across Dante's face, quickly masked by his usual control. Paolo will retrieve whatever you need. He extended his hand, a businesslike gesture at odds with the tension still simmering between us. Do we have a deal, Eliana? I placed my hand in his, ignoring the spark of electricity that shot up my arm at his touch. For now. But if I find out you're lying to me about Tommy, about any of this, you won't, he interrupted, his fingers tightening around mine. I promise you that. Promises from a man like Dante Russo should have meant nothing. Yet as his dark eyes held mine, I found myself wanting to believe him. A dangerous inclination for a woman already in too deep. Now, he said, releasing my hand and returning to his seat at the table. Shall we finish our lunch while Paolo collects your things? The chef will be insulted if we let his carbonara go to waste. The casual shift in tone was disorienting, as if we hadn't just negotiated terms that would determine whether I lived or died. But that, I was learning, was how Dante operated. Shifting seamlessly between charming host and dangerous predator, never letting me find stable footing. I returned to my seat, picking up my fork with a hand that still tingled from his touch. You never did tell me who you think killed Tommy. Dante's expression darkened. No, I didn't, but with your help, I intend to find out. His eyes met mine across the table, filled with a promise that sent a chill down my spine. And when I do, they'll wish they'd never heard the name Russo. The bedroom Dante's housekeeper showed me to was larger than my entire apartment, with a 4-poster bed draped in cream-colored linens and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate's manicured gardens. A fresh bouquet of lilies sat on the antique writing desk, their scent perfuming the air. It was beautiful, comfortable, and utterly foreign, like stepping into someone else's life. The bathroom is through there, Mrs. Rivera explained, gesturing to a door on the right. Mr. Russo had it stocked with toiletries, but if you need anything else, just let me know. Thank you, I murmured, still taking in the opulence around me. Dinner is at 7 in the small dining room, she continued. Mr. Russo asked me to tell you he'll be occupied with business until then, but you're welcome to explore the main floor and gardens. Paolo will be nearby if you need anything. Translation. I was free to roam, but under surveillance. The gilded cage was taking shape. After Mrs. Rivera left, I inspected the room more thoroughly, running my fingers over expensive fabrics and solid wood furniture. The closet was empty, waiting for Paolo to return with my meager belongings. I wondered how my thrift store clothes would look hanging next to whatever designer pieces normally occupied this space. I pulled the flash drive from my coat pocket, turning it over in my hand. Such a small thing to cause so much destruction. I'd agreed to work with Dante to unlock its secrets, but I hadn't handed it over yet. It remained my only leverage, my only insurance policy in a game where I was severely outmatched. The sound of a car pulling up drew me to the window. Paolo stepped out of the SUV, carrying my duffel bag and laptop case. I watched as he spoke briefly with another man, clearly security from his posture and the subtle bulge of a holster beneath his jacket. The estate was well guarded, as expected for someone of Dante's position. A soft knock announced Paolo's arrival with my belongings. "Ms. Pierce," he said, setting the bags on a bench at the foot of the bed. "Is there anything else you require?" "No, thank you." I hesitated, then added, "How long have you worked for Mr. Russo?" Paolo's expression remained professionally neutral. "8 years, ma'am." "You must know him well, then." A flicker of something, loyalty perhaps, crossed his face. "Well enough to know he's a good man to have on your side, Ms. Pierce." The statement came with an undercurrent of warning that wasn't lost on me. After he left, I unpacked my few possessions, the process taking embarrassingly little time. My entire life fit into a single drawer of the massive dresser. I placed my laptop on the desk and tucked the flash drive into a hidden pocket of my toiletry bag. Not the most secure hiding place, but it would have to do for now. The afternoon stretched before me, empty and uncertain. Despite Mrs. Rivera's invitation to explore, I felt reluctant to leave the relative safety of my room, but the walls were already closing in, and sitting alone with my thoughts would only feed my anxiety. I ventured downstairs, my footsteps echoing on the marble floors. The house was quiet, with only the occasional sounds of staff going about their duties. I followed a hallway lined with oil paintings, landscapes mostly, though a few appeared to be family portraits. In one, a dark-haired woman with Dante's eyes smiled serenely at the painter. His mother, perhaps. The hallway opened into a magnificent library that took my breath away. 2 stories of bookshelves lined the walls, accessed by a wrought iron spiral staircase to the second level. Leather armchairs and reading lamps were arranged in cozy groupings, and a massive fireplace dominated one wall. "Find something that interests you?" I spun around to find Dante standing in the doorway, watching me with an unreadable expression. Despite Mrs. Rivera saying he'd be occupied until dinner, here he was, still in the same clothes from lunch but with his sleeves rolled up further and his collar unbuttoned, giving him a more relaxed appearance. "I was just exploring," I explained, gesturing to the books surrounding us. "It's an impressive collection. My mother's primarily," he said, moving into the room. "She was the reader in the family. My father preferred more active pursuits." "And you?" I asked, curious despite myself. He ran his fingers along the spine of a nearby volume. "I appreciate both, in different contexts." His eyes met mine, a hint of challenge in their depths. Sometimes patience and careful study yield better results than force. "Is that what this is?" I gestured between us. "A careful study?" A smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Perhaps." He moved to a cabinet near the fireplace, removing a decanter and 2 glasses. "Drink?" "It's barely 4 o'clock, I pointed out. "Time is relative when you're plotting to decrypt stolen files," he countered, pouring amber liquid into both glasses anyway. "Besides, I thought we might start working on our little project." My pulse quickened. "Now?" He offered me one of the glasses. "No time like the present, Eliana. Unless you'd prefer to continue our cat-and-mouse game indefinitely," I accepted the drink, our fingers brushing in the exchange. "Where should we start?" Dante gestured toward a sitting area near the fireplace. "You mentioned Tommy's hint about your first date at the aquarium. Penguin exhibit, wasn't it?" I nodded, taking a seat in one of the leather armchairs. "But penguin is too obvious for a password." "Agreed." Dante sat opposite me, his long legs stretched out casually. What else was significant about that day? Any inside jokes? Specific moments that stood out? I closed my eyes, trying to recall details that had faded with time and grief. We had lunch at the cafe overlooking the harbor. Tommy spilled his soda on a child at the next table. A small smile tugged at my lips at the memory. The mother was furious, but Tommy charmed his way out of it, the way he always did. That was his talent, Dante agreed, surprising me with the note of genuine fondness in his voice. Tommy could talk his way into or out of anything. I opened my eyes, studying Dante's expression. "You liked him." "I did," he admitted, which made his betrayal all the more disappointing. The reminder of Tommy's theft and his fate sobered me. What else do you need to know? Details, Eliana. The password could be hidden in the smallest memory. He leaned forward slightly. What did you talk about? What gifts did you exchange, if any? We talked about our childhoods, our dreams. Normal first date stuff. I took a sip of my drink, the scotch warming a path down my throat. Tommy talked about wanting to travel to Italy someday, to see where his grandparents came from. Sicily, Dante supplied. His grandmother was from a small village outside Palermo. That's how his father first connected with my family. The casual reminder of the criminal ties between our worlds was jarring. I pressed on, focusing on the task at hand. There was a stuffed penguin in the gift shop. Tommy bought it for me, said it was to remember our first date. Another memory surfaced. He named it Admiral. Admiral the Penguin, Dante repeated thoughtfully. Try that as the password. I hesitated, reluctant to reveal whether I had the drive with me. Dante read my expression easily. I know you didn't leave it in your toiletry bag, Eliana. I saw you move it before you came downstairs. Heat rushed to my face. You've been watching me? Security cameras in the hallways, he explained unapologetically. Standard procedure. In the bedrooms too? I demanded, anger rising. No, he said firmly. Contrary to what you might believe, I do have boundaries. I wasn't entirely convinced, but arguing seemed pointless. Fine, but I'm not handing over the drive until I'm sure I can trust you. Trust is earned, I understand that. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek laptop. Use this. It's secure, isolated from any networks. You can check the drive without risk of the data being intercepted. The gesture was unexpectedly reasonable. I studied him for a moment, trying to reconcile this accommodating man with the dangerous Mafia boss I'd been running from. Okay, I said finally, retrieving the flash drive from the inner pocket of my cardigan where I'd transferred it. But I'll type the password myself. Dante handed me the laptop with a slight bow of his head. Be my guest. I inserted the drive, watching as the same password prompt appeared on the screen. With a deep breath, I typed, Admiral the Penguin. Access denied. One attempt remaining before data wipe. Panic fluttered in my chest. It didn't work. Dante remained calm. Try variations. No spaces, all lowercase, add numbers. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. We only had one more chance before the drive wiped itself. This is too risky. We need to think more carefully. Trust your instincts, Dante urged, moving to sit beside me on the sofa. What else did Tommy say about your first date? About where you began? I closed my eyes again, trying to hear Tommy's voice in my memory. Remember our first date? The answer's where we began. Where we began. Not the aquarium itself, but the ticket counter, I murmured, opening my eyes. We met at the ticket counter. I was fumbling with my wallet, and Tommy paid for my ticket. That's literally where we began. The ticket number? Dante suggested. I shook my head. No one remembers ticket numbers from 3 years ago. My mind raced, seeking connections. Wait. The aquarium had a special exhibit that month. Something about endangered marine life. The ticket had a special code on it. Do you remember it? No, but I thought harder. Tommy kept the ticket stub in his wallet. He showed it to me months later, said it was his good luck charm. The code started with MP for Marine Protection. Dante's eyes lit with understanding. Marine Protection, followed by numbers. Any idea what they might be? A memory surfaced. Tommy teasing me about my birthday being easy to remember. My birthday is March 17th. He might have used 317. MP 317, Dante repeated. Try it. My hands shook slightly as I typed the characters. One chance left. If I was wrong, we'd lose everything. I hit enter before I could second-guess myself. The screen changed, folders appearing in neat rows. We were in. You did it, Dante breathed, leaning closer to see the screen, his shoulder pressed against mine, warm and solid. We did it, I corrected, too relieved to move away from his proximity. The drive contained dozens of folders, labeled with dates and cryptic abbreviations. I clicked on one labeled DCP-DCI, revealing a list of names. Police officers, based on the ranks listed beside them, confidential informants within the Chicago Police Department, Dante explained, his voice tight. This is exactly what I feared. Names, badge numbers, payment schedules. I opened another folder labeled FSL accounts, finding spreadsheets of offshore bank accounts, transaction histories, and shell companies. Financial operations, Dante murmured. Laundering pathways, legitimate business fronts. He rubbed a hand over his face. If this fell into the hands of federal authorities, everything would collapse. I finished for him. Yes, but it's more than that. He pointed to a folder labeled Rivals Intel. This contains information on every other organization operating in the Midwest, their operations, their weaknesses, their leadership structures. His expression darkened. In the wrong hands, this could spark a war that would leave Chicago's streets running red. I scrolled through more folders, stopping at one labeled simply DRSR. Inside was a single video file. What's this? Dante's body tensed beside me. Play it. I clicked the file. The video showed a dimly lit office, an elderly man sitting behind a desk, Dante's father, I assumed, based on the resemblance. He was speaking with someone off camera, his expression grim. The shipment arrives Tuesday, the elder Russo was saying. Make sure everything is in place. We can't afford another mistake like Baltimore. It won't be a problem, a familiar voice responded from off camera. Tommy's voice. The angle shifted, and Tommy came into view, standing confidently before the desk. I've handled everything personally. The cops are paid. The dock workers are instructed. It'll be clean. It better be, Salvatore Russo replied. Too many people know about this one. If anything goes wrong, a third voice interrupted, the camera panning to show a well-dressed man entering the room. Nothing will go wrong because this is the last shipment. Beside me, Dante inhaled sharply. Uncle Stephen. On screen, Stephen Russo approached the desk with the casual authority of someone accustomed to power. The commission has decided, Sal. We're moving in a new direction. Legitimate businesses, clean money. This old-school operation is finished. Salvatore rose from his chair, fury etched in every line of his face. You don't make those decisions. I built this family from nothing. And now you're a liability. Stephen replied coldly. The vote was unanimous. Step down gracefully, or what? Salvatore challenged. The video cut abruptly to static before ending. Silence hung heavy in the library as the implications settled between us. I turned to Dante, finding his face pale with shock and rage. Your uncle, I whispered. He orchestrated your father's death, and Tommy recorded it all, Dante said, his voice hollow. Insurance, he called it. His eyes met mine, blazing with newfound purpose. Now we know who killed Tommy, who's been dismantling my operations from within. Your own uncle, I said, still processing the betrayal. But why would Tommy steal this? Why not just show it to you? Because he didn't know who to trust, Dante answered, standing abruptly to pace the room. If Stephen had turned the commission against my father, who else might be compromised? Tommy was covering his bases, keeping evidence somewhere safe until he could determine who was loyal. I watched him move, the controlled power in his stride belying the fury I could sense beneath the surface. What happens now? Dante stopped, turning to face me with an expression that sent a chill down my spine. Now, I deal with my uncle, and you... He moved back to the sofa, sitting closer than before. You stay here, where I can protect you. I fulfilled my part of our bargain, I reminded him. I helped you unlock the drive, and now you know too much, he countered. Stephen won't hesitate to eliminate anyone with knowledge of his betrayal. The moment you leave my protection, you're as good as dead. Fear clawed at my throat. So, I'm still a prisoner. His hand covered mine, warm and surprisingly gentle. No. You're under my protection. There's a difference. Is there? I challenged, even as I made no move to pull away from his touch. Yes. His eyes held mine, intense and unguarded for perhaps the first time since we'd met. A prisoner has no choice. You do. Stay voluntarily. Help me finish this, and I'll honor our agreement. Money, new identity, freedom, whatever you want. And if I choose to leave now? His grip tightened slightly. Then I'll have Paolo drive you wherever you want to go, with enough cash to disappear for a while. His expression grew grave. But I won't be able to protect you, and Stephen will find you eventually. He's thorough that way. It wasn't much of a choice. Stay with the devil I was beginning to know, or flee into the waiting arms of one I didn't. How long will it take? I asked. To deal with your uncle? A few days, perhaps a week, he answered. Stephen is careful, surrounded by his own security. I'll need to plan this properly. I nodded slowly. Then I'll stay. For now. Relief softened his features. Thank you. His thumb traced small circles on the back of my hand, the casual intimacy making my pulse quicken. I won't forget this, Eliana. I'm not doing it for you, I clarified. I'm doing it for Tommy, for justice. A hint of a smile touched his lips. Of course. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the drive's revelations hanging between us. His hand remained on mine, neither of us acknowledging the contact, yet neither pulling away. We should review the rest of the files, I said finally, breaking the spell. There might be more evidence against Stephen, details about his plan. Dante nodded, reluctantly releasing my hand. Yes, but not tonight. It's getting late, and after what we've discovered, I need to increase security around the estate. Stephen has eyes everywhere. As if on cue, Paolo appeared in the doorway. Sir, dinner is ready. Thank you, Paolo. Dante stood, offering me his hand. Shall we continue this conversation over food? I find I've worked up quite an appetite. I accepted his hand, allowing him to pull me to my feet. Our bodies ended up closer than necessary, his scent, sandalwood and spice, enveloping me. This doesn't change anything, I said quietly, needing to maintain some boundary, some distance from the magnetic pull I felt toward him. I'm still leaving when this is over. His eyes searched mine, seeing more than I wanted him to. If that's what you still want when the time comes. The implication that my desires might change hung in the air between us, neither acknowledged nor denied. I stepped back, breaking the connection. Let's eat, I said, changing the subject. And then you can tell me exactly how you plan to bring down your uncle without getting us both killed in the process. Dante's smile was dangerous and somehow thrilling. With pleasure, Eliana, with pleasure. The next 3 days passed in a blur of strategy sessions and revelations. Dante and I combed through every file on the drive, uncovering the full extent of Stephen Russo's betrayal. It wasn't just Dante's father. He'd orchestrated the death of 3 other senior family members had died in accidents over the past 18 months, all replaced by Stephen's loyal lieutenants. We worked primarily in the library, surrounded by ancient books and modern technology in equal measure. Paolo brought meals that we often forgot to eat, too absorbed in piecing together the conspiracy that had claimed Tommy's life and threatened to destroy what remained of the Russo family. Despite the grim nature of our work, I found myself drawn to Dante in ways I hadn't anticipated. He was brilliant, methodical, with an ability to see patterns where others saw only chaos. When he spoke of his family, not the criminal organization but the actual blood relations, his voice softened with genuine affection and loyalty. My father wasn't a good man by conventional standards, he admitted on the second night, as we sat before the fireplace nursing glasses of scotch. But he had a code. Lines he wouldn't cross. Stephen never understood that. For him, it was always about power, about winning at any cost. And you? I asked, watching the firelight play across his features. What's your code? He considered the question, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Protect what's mine. Honor my obligations. Never betray family. His eyes met mine. Until now, those principles never came into conflict. Stephen betrayed you first, I pointed out. He forfeited any claim to family loyalty. Perhaps. Dante's expression darkened, but patricide is still patricide even when justified. There's no coming back from that kind of decision. I understood then that beneath his controlled exterior, Dante was wrestling with demons I could barely comprehend. The weight of family legacy, of blood obligation, pressed upon him even as he planned to destroy the very man who shared his name and blood. On the morning of the 4th day, I awoke to find a dress laid out on the bench at the foot of my bed, a simple but elegant black cocktail dress that looked like it had been made for me. Mrs. Rivera appeared with a tray of coffee and pastries. "Mr. Russo asked me to inform you that there will be a gathering tonight," she explained, setting down the tray. "Family business. The dress is for you, if it pleases you." My stomach tightened with apprehension. "What kind of gathering?" "A celebration of sorts," she replied carefully. "Mr. Stephen's birthday. The family gathers each year at his estate." The pieces clicked into place. Dante was making his move tonight, using his uncle's birthday as cover. My hands trembled slightly as I lifted my coffee cup. "Will I be expected to attend?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Mr. Russo will discuss the details with you. He's waiting in his study whenever you're ready." With that cryptic statement, she left me alone with my racing thoughts. I dressed quickly in jeans and a sweater, leaving the black dress untouched for the moment. The hallways felt different this morning, tenser somehow, as if the house itself sensed the coming confrontation. 2 new security men stood at the bottom of the grand staircase, nodding respectfully as I passed. Dante's study was at the back of the house, a masculine space of dark wood and leather with windows overlooking the expansive grounds. He stood at one of these windows, hands clasped behind his back, his posture rigid with barely contained energy. "You're planning something for tonight," I said without preamble. "At your uncle's party." He turned, his expression carefully neutral. "Yes." "Were you planning to tell me?" "I'm telling you now." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Please, sit." I remained standing. "I want to know exactly what you're planning, Dante. No half-truths, no vague assurances." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Always direct. It's one of the things I admire about you, Eliana." He moved to his desk, retrieving a folder which he handed to me. "Tonight, Stephen hosts his annual birthday celebration. Family, close associates, corrupt officials who enjoy his patronage, all gathered under one roof." I opened the folder to find floor plans of an estate even larger than Dante's, along with security details and staff rotations. "You're going to kill him," I stated flatly. "I'm going to expose him," Dante corrected. "To the family, to the commission, to everyone who matters in our world. The evidence we've gathered is irrefutable. Once they see what he's done, they'll sanction his removal, and if they don't?" His eyes hardened. "Then I have contingencies." I closed the folder, my hands shaking slightly. "Where do I fit into this plan?" Dante's expression softened. "You don't. Not directly. You'll attend as my guest. Stay by my side throughout the evening. When the confrontation happens, Paolo will escort you to safety." "You're using me as cover," I realized. "Your uncle won't suspect anything if you bring a date." "It's not just that." He moved closer, close enough that I could see the tension in his jaw, the determination in his eyes. "I need someone I trust watching my back, someone who knows what's at stake." The admission stunned me. "You trust me?" His hand came up to my face, fingers brushing my cheek in what was becoming a familiar gesture. "Against all logic and experience, yes. I do." Something shifted between us in that moment. A recognition that what had begun as a forced alliance had evolved into something more complex, more real. I stepped back, needing distance to think clearly. What if something goes wrong? What if he's expecting this? "He isn't," Dante said with absolute certainty. "Stephen believes I'm still in the dark, still the obedient nephew in mourning. He's invited me to make a toast tonight, to officially welcome me into the new family leadership." His smile was cold. He'll get a speech he wasn't expecting. The plan was audacious, dangerous, and our best chance at justice for Tommy, for Dante's father, for all the others who had fallen victim to Stephen's ambition. "Okay," I said finally. "I'm in." Relief flickered across his features. "Thank you." "The dress, I saw it," I interrupted. "Black isn't subtle for a funeral. It's expected," he countered. "Family gatherings have a dress code. Black for men, black or red for women. Tradition." He checked his watch. "We leave at 7. Paolo will bring you anything else you need. Jewelry, shoes, whatever makes you comfortable." "I'm not comfortable with any of this," I admitted, "but I'll be ready." He nodded, his eyes holding mine. "When this is over, when Stephen has paid for his crimes, you'll be free to go, as promised. New identity, new life, wherever you want." The reminder of our deal should have brought relief. Instead, it left me with an unexpected hollowness. Right, I murmured, back to the original plan. Something flashed in his eyes, regret, perhaps, or something more complicated, but he merely nodded again, returning to the window and effectively dismissing me. I spent the rest of the day in a state of nervous anticipation, alternating between pacing my room and trying to distract myself with books from the library. Paolo delivered a box containing elegant black heels and a simple diamond pendant that caught the light with quiet brilliance. By 6:30, I stood before the mirror in the black dress, hardly recognizing the woman who stared back at me. The dress fit perfectly, hugging curves I usually hid beneath practical clothes. With my hair swept up and the diamond pendant gleaming at my throat, I looked like I belonged in Dante's world, a thought that was both thrilling and terrifying. A soft knock announced Dante's arrival. When I opened the door, the appreciation in his eyes sent heat flooding through me. "You look..." He paused, searching for the right word. "Magnificent." He looked rather magnificent himself in a black tuxedo that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders and the lean strength of his body. A dangerous elegance radiated from him, the civilized veneer barely concealing the predator beneath. "Ready?" he asked, offering his arm. I took it, feeling the solid muscle beneath the expensive fabric. As I'll ever be. The drive to Stephen's estate took 30 minutes, most of which passed in tense silence. Dante reviewed final details with Paolo, while I stared out the window, trying to calm my racing heart. This wasn't my fight, I reminded myself. I was here for Tommy, for closure, for the freedom Dante had promised once it was over. Yet as we pulled through the ornate gates of Stephen's mansion, I couldn't ignore the protective instinct that surged through me at the thought of Dante facing his treacherous uncle alone. The estate was ablaze with lights, luxury cars lining the circular driveway. Security personnel dotted the property, their earpieces and subtle bulges beneath their jackets advertising their purpose. Paolo handed our invitation to a stone-faced man at the door, who nodded respectfully to Dante. "Mr. Russo," the man murmured. "Mr. Stephen will be pleased you came." Dante's smile was perfectly pleasant, betraying none of his true intentions. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Inside, the mansion gleamed with old-world opulence. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, priceless artwork adorning the walls. At least 50 guests mingled in the grand reception room, drinking champagne and engaging in the kind of muted conversations that suggested business rather than pleasure. Dante kept me close, his hand resting possessively at the small of my back as he navigated the crowd. He introduced me simply as Eliana, offering no explanation for my presence. The men nodded politely. The women assessed me with calculating eyes, clearly wondering what made me special enough to accompany the nephew of the guest of honor. "Dante!" A booming voice cut through the murmur of conversation. "There you are, my boy." Stephen Russo approached, arms outstretched in greeting. He was older than I expected, mid-60s, with silver hair and the kind of tan that spoke of winters spent in tropical locations. His smile was wide, welcoming, utterly at odds with the cold-blooded killer I knew him to be. "Uncle Stephen," Dante replied, accepting the older man's embrace with a convincing display of warmth. "Happy birthday. You look well." "Never better," Stephen declared, turning his attention to me. "And who is this lovely creature?" "Eliana Pierce," Dante said, his hand tightening slightly on my waist. "A recent acquaintance who's become quite important to me." Stephen's eyebrows rose in exaggerated surprise. "Is that so?" Well. He took my hand, bringing it to his lips in an old-fashioned gesture. "A pleasure, my dear. Any woman who can capture my nephew's attention is a rare find indeed." His eyes, the same dark shade as Dante's but lacking their depth, assessed me with unconcealed curiosity. "Have we met before? You seem familiar somehow." My heart stuttered. If Stephen recognized me as Tommy's girlfriend, everything could unravel. "I don't believe so," I replied smoothly. "I've only recently moved to Chicago." He continued to study me for a moment longer, before turning back to Dante. "You're still planning to make the toast later?" "Of course," Dante assured him. "I've been working on it all week." Stephen clapped him on the shoulder. "Excellent. Now, mingle. Enjoy yourselves." Dinner will be served at 9. He moved away to greet other guests, his departure leaving me slightly breathless with relief. He suspects something, I whispered to Dante. No, Dante replied, guiding me toward the bar. He's just trying to place you. Stephen prides himself on never forgetting a face. What if he connects me to Tommy? Dante's expression remained calm, but I felt the tension in his body. He won't. Tommy kept you separate from family business. One of his smarter decisions. We spent the next hour moving through the party, Dante introducing me to key family members and associates. I committed names to memory, noting who responded to Dante with genuine respect versus those whose deference seemed forced. If his plan succeeded, these power dynamics would shift dramatically before the night was through. At 9, we moved to an opulent dining room where place cards guided guests to assigned seats. I found myself between Dante and an elderly man introduced as a retired judge, one of many corrupted officials in the Russo family's pocket. Throughout the lavish meal, I watched Stephen holding court at the head of the table, accepting birthday wishes and regaling his guests with stories that prompted obedient laughter. Beside me, Dante ate little and drank less, his attention fixed on his uncle with predatory focus. As dessert was served, Stephen rose, tapping his glass for attention. Friends, family, honored guests. Thank you for joining me on this special evening, he raised his glass. To another successful year for our enterprises, and to the continued prosperity of the Russo family. Polite applause followed as everyone drank. Stephen gestured toward Dante, and now, I believe my nephew has a few words to share. This was it. The moment everything would change. Dante squeezed my hand beneath the table before rising to his feet, champagne glass in hand. Thank you, Uncle. His voice carried effortlessly through the room. It's an honor to be here tonight, celebrating with the man who has guided our family through a period of transition. Murmurs of agreement rippled around the table. Stephen nodded magnanimously. Family has always been the foundation of everything we do, Dante continued. The bonds of blood and loyalty that unite us, that make us strong when others would see us fall. He paused, his gaze sweeping the assembled guests. Which is why betrayal from within is the one sin that cannot be forgiven. A subtle shift in atmosphere, confusion, tension beginning to build. Stephen's smile faltered. My father, Dante said, his voice hardening, understood the value of evidence, of keeping records that might one day speak when those who created them could not. He set down his glass, reaching inside his jacket to withdraw a tablet. Would anyone like to see what those records reveal about my father's murder? About who truly ordered it? Chaos erupted. Stephen leapt to his feet, his face contorted with rage. Security, he shouted. Remove him. But the security men didn't move. Instead, Paolo and 3 other men I recognized from Dante's estate stepped forward, their weapons now visible. Your security has been relieved, Dante informed his uncle coldly. These men answer to me now. Stephen's eyes darted around the table, seeking allies, finding only shocked faces and uncertain loyalties. This is absurd, he blustered. Salvatore died in a car accident. Everyone knows this. Everyone was told this, Dante corrected. He tapped the tablet, and a video began playing on the large screen that dominated one wall of the dining room. It was the same footage we'd discovered on the drive, but extended now to show what happened after the abrupt cut. On screen, Stephen pulled a gun, pointing it at Salvatore's chest. The old ways are finished, Sal. Either accept retirement or accept this. My son will never let you get away with this, Salvatore warned. Stephen's laugh was cold. Dante? He's soft. Always has been. I'll bring him into the fold, guide him. By the time he's ready to take any real power, he'll be mine completely. The footage showed Salvatore lunging across the desk, Stephen firing twice, Tommy's shocked face as he witnessed the murder. Then Stephen turning to Tommy, clean this up. Make it look like an accident. Do this right, and there's a place for you at the top. The video ended, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. Tommy Gallagher recorded this, Dante explained to the room at large. Kept it as insurance. When Stephen discovered he had it, Tommy became a liability that needed to be eliminated, his eyes locked with his uncle's. Just like my father. Just like anyone who stands in the way of Stephen's ambition. An older man at the far end of the table stood slowly. I recognized him from Dante's descriptions as Antonio Calabresi, head of the commission that governed the families. "These are serious accusations, Dante," Calabresi said gravely, "if what you've shown us is authentic." "It's a forgery!" Stephen snarled. "A desperate attempt by my nephew to seize power." "There's more," Dante replied calmly. He swiped through the tablet, displaying financial records, recordings of phone calls, evidence of Stephen's systematic dismantling of Salvatore's loyalists. All of this was compiled by my father and supplemented by Tommy before their deaths. Irrefutable evidence of treason against the family. Calabresi studied the evidence, his expression growing darker with each revelation. Finally, he looked up, first at Stephen, then at Dante. "The commission will need to deliberate on this matter." "What's to deliberate?" Stephen spat. "He comes to my birthday dinner, makes these wild accusations." "Enough." Calabresi's voice cut through Stephen's protests like a blade. "Dante has presented evidence that cannot be ignored. You will be given an opportunity to defend yourself, before the full commission, tomorrow night." He nodded to several men around the table. "Until then, you will remain under guard." I watched as the color drained from Stephen's face, the realization of his defeat washing over him in visible waves. His eyes found mine suddenly, narrowing with unexpected recognition. "You," he hissed. "Gallagher's woman. I knew I'd seen you before." Dante moved protectively closer to me. "She's under my protection now. She's dead," Stephen snarled. "You're both dead. You think the commission will save you? I still have men loyal to me, men who—" He never finished the sentence. Paolo's hand covered Stephen's mouth from behind, a syringe appearing in his other hand. The needle plunged into Stephen's neck, his eyes widening in shock before rolling back. He slumped in Paolo's grip, unconscious, but alive. "Medical emergency," Dante announced to the startled guests. "My uncle hasn't been well. Paolo will ensure he receives proper care." He turned to Calabresi. "With your permission, I'll secure him until the commission meeting." Calabresi nodded grimly. "See that he arrives intact." The dinner party dissolved into tense clusters of conversation as Paolo and another security man carried Stephen's unconscious form from the room. Dante guided me through the chaos, his hand firm at my elbow, his expression revealing nothing of the triumph he must have felt. "We need to leave," he murmured in my ear. "Now. Stephen's most loyal people aren't here tonight. But they'll hear about this soon enough." Outside, our car waited at the bottom of the steps. Dante ushered me inside, giving Paolo rapid instructions before joining me in the back seat. As we pulled away from the mansion, the tension that had held him rigid throughout the evening seemed to dissolve. He leaned back against the seat, closing his eyes briefly. "It's done," he said softly. "After a year of searching, of not knowing who to trust, it's finally done." "What happens now?" I asked, still processing the night's dramatic events. "The commission will convene tomorrow. With the evidence we presented, they'll sanction Stephen's removal. The family businesses will stabilize under new leadership." He turned to look at me, his expression softening. "And you will be free to go, as promised. New identity, new life, far from Chicago." The reminder of our deal hung between us, suddenly heavier than before. "Is that still what you want?" I asked, searching his face for answers to questions I wasn't brave enough to voice directly. Something flickered in his eyes, vulnerability, hope quickly masked. "What I want stopped mattering the day I took my father's place," he said quietly. "My path was chosen for me long ago." "That's not what I asked." He looked away, staring out at the darkened landscape rushing past the window. "What I want," he said carefully, "is for you to be safe, happy, if possible, free from the shadow that's hung over you since Tommy's death. And if I said I might want something else?" His eyes returned to mine, cautious but intent. "What else could you possibly want, Eliana?" The car felt suddenly too small, the air between us charged with unspoken possibilities. I'd spent a year running from the world Dante inhabited, yet in the past week, I'd found something with him I hadn't expected. Understanding, respect, a connection that transcended our circumstances. "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I'd like the chance to figure it out on my terms, not as a prisoner or a bargaining chip, or a means to an end. Hope bloomed fully in his expression now. Unguarded and startlingly vulnerable. "I can offer you that chance," he said, taking my hand in his. "No expectations, no obligations. Just possibility." His thumb traced circles on my palm, the simple touch igniting something warm and dangerous in my chest. "I'm not offering forever," I clarified. "Just time, to see if there's something real beneath all this chaos." "Time," he repeated, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I can work with that." The car turned onto the private road leading to Dante's estate, security gates opening automatically to admit us. As we pulled up to the house, Dante helped me out, his hand lingering on mine. "There's something else you should know," he said, his expression turning serious again. "The commission will likely offer me my father's position after tomorrow's meeting. Leadership of the Chicago operation." I understood the implication immediately. "You'd be taking his place completely." "Yes." His eyes held mine, honest and direct. "I won't pretend to be something I'm not, Eliana. This world, these responsibilities, they're part of who I am. If you stay, even for a while, that's the reality you'd be choosing to explore. The old me, the woman who had fled Boston in terror, would have run from such a proposition without a second thought. But I wasn't that woman anymore. The past week had changed me, showing me strength I hadn't known I possessed." "I understand," I said simply. Relief washed over his features. He raised my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles with a gentleness that belied the power I knew he possessed. "Then let's go inside," he said softly. "Tomorrow will arrive soon enough, with all its complications. Tonight belongs to us." As we walked up the steps to the house, his house, possibly our house, at least for now, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Tommy was gone, but his final act had brought justice for Dante's father, and, unexpectedly, a new beginning for me. I didn't know what the future held, what challenges we would face, or how long this fragile thing between us might last. But for the first time in a year, I wasn't running. I was walking deliberately toward something, someone of my own choosing, and in that moment, it was enough.